Hey, y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, the Festival of Racing is underway at Belmont, and we've got a great all stakes pick four on Friday's card. So let's take a look at it and see if we can take it down. The first leg of the all stakes pick four on Friday at Belmont is the Grade 1 New York Stakes, and it's for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's running a mile and a quarter on the inner turf. And number one, by the way, this is a pretty damn good race. Really nice field. Number one is Flirting Bridge. Trained by Brendan Walsh, Tyler Gaffalione, great combination, did really well at Keeneland. This one, the big concern for me is that while this one has done pretty well since coming over to North America, looks to be, I'm just to be a cut below. I'm not sure that's the top end. You see that last race was a very easy allowance race win coming off the layoff, and really didn't have to work terribly hard, but won very professionally and had plenty left in the tank. So, excuse me. I think this one is kind of an outsider here. There's just others who are a little better, and really that's the bottom line. But at 20-1, I wouldn't talk you out of using this one underneath. But a win candidate, a little remote. Number two is Shantazara, one of the many Chad Browns that are in this race. You've got Shantazara has been was doing just great early in her career since coming over. Excuse me, you see the Jenny Wiley was probably the peak effort, but after that, the full harvest, something went wrong, and has been okay coming back this year. The Pegasus World Cup, I remember specifically, we were all well against her, and for good reason, I thought, and it ran a nice race, but you see, didn't take it down. And the last couple have been, the Hillsborough was an okay win, and the Modesty was a pretty good field, and she couldn't handle Diddy and really didn't factor very well at all. So I think this one's on the outside. Kind of hard to trust at this point, and I think is regressing and is probably a cut below, and I'm going to pass. Diddy, it's kind of hard to knock. Basically is a win machine on the turf, having won 8 out of 9 and 4 straight since coming to the U.S. The nice thing you like to see is as the class has been getting better, she has continued to be up to the challenge. This is obviously a really big test, a Grade 1 with a really nice field. But couldn't be coming into this race in better form, and she's handy and versatile. So, but however the race shapes out where they decide to do with her, I think she's going to be fine. And I think at a price, this one's pretty interesting. Number 4 is Market Segmentation. And this is another one who has been, since coming back off the layoff in September last year, has been getting progressively better every single race, and as the classes are going up as well. And you see that last Bogey, that was a really solid effort and looked like had plenty in the tank left. Interesting that Rod Ortiz comes off this one, and you get his brother, Jose, who's been having a great Belmont meet. I think this one is kind of interesting, and if another jump forward, puts this one in the mix, and I would definitely use. Probably underneath is more likely, but I think this one's got a chance. Number 5 is Virginia Joy, yet another Chad Brown. This one, there's not a lot of early pace in this race, so I'll expect this one to probably go up on the engine. The most successful effort was the Flower Bowl last September, but since then has been kind of okay, not great, and I just think this is another one that's kind of a cut below, and you do get Chad Brown at 15-1. There's a remote possibility that this one could steal it, but I have my reservations. Those are great connections, but I just don't think this one's good enough to win. McCulloch is another Chad Brown. Rod Ortiz sticks with this one, and that's kind of curious to me. Because you look at the buyers and they're pretty light compared to the rest of this field. and has been running primarily against 3-year-olds only, and has been doing pretty well. You can't knock that mark. But what is of concern is the first time against Olders in the Modesty, she really didn't keep up and really didn't do terribly well. Now, you could say that she's coming off a layoff, maybe needed a race. That was a fairly long layoff. But it's a little troubling also that she did not equal or surpass her career high buyer. So there's a couple of questions here. And given the class test here, I'm going to wait one because I don't think this one really matches up too well. Number 7 is Warlike Goddess, needs no introduction. Belmont, Joel Rosario, the connections. The only question I have is that this one is cutting back from the usual 1.5 miles to 1.25 miles. That's really the only issue I would have. Other than that, I mean, this one's completely logical. Is head and shoulders above most of these. So I think this is a logical win candidate you'd have to definitely use, and you might even consider singling. With the Moonlight, number 8, Charlie Appleby has come back again, and he brings his A-rider, Bill Buick. That usually means he's serious. This one could, has stacked up pretty well coming over here. Certainly likes the firmer ground. You can see that last effort in the Dolly at Newmarket was on soft turf, and obviously doesn't care for it. But the prior efforts here and on the Belmont track tells you that she's not going to have a problem with it, that she likes it. The biggest question I have is she seems to have plateaued. You see a lot of 94 buyers, and I'm just not sure there's another jump in the tank to take on Warlike Goddess. Now, Charlie Appleby, you can't argue with his record, but he has been beatable lately. Let's just note that even Modern Games didn't win when he came over this year. So it's not an automatic. I think this one will likely be up near the pace, which would definitely help and put this one in good position. But I have my reservations as whether or not this one can take them all the way. But I wouldn't argue with anybody who wants to use. Second leg of Friday's All Stakes Pick 4 is the 9th, and it's the Grade 1 Acorn Stakes. It is run on the dirt at 1 1/16 for 3-year-old fillies and fillies. So the interesting thing to note is, of course, with Belmont, this is a one-turn race. So it's for those who ran in the Oaks, I mean, this is cutting back to a turn, and with a little less distance, perhaps it brings them up in the race where perhaps they might not be ordinarily. So it's that's a big factor in this race in particular when you look at this field. Case in point, number 1, Darth Vader. I have had questions about this one as far as 2 turns and distance. You see in the Oaks did a lot better than I suspected she would, getting 5th. But, obviously was up near the lead and then couldn't hold on late and faded back. So I still have some questions. However, at 1 turn, that would definitely help this one's chances. The only other thing you have to wonder about is that was a big effort for her, and it was a career high buyer, and there is the possibility of a little bit of a regression. You see, prior in the Devona Dale, when she ran that huge race at 46-1, came back in the Gulfstream Park Oaks and had a little bit of a regression. So that's a thought that maybe that might be the case, and putting her in a place where, at 1 1/16 where it isn't necessarily a dream distance for her, you do have to wonder about that. You do get Johnny V aboard. Wouldn't be surprised to see this one up on the engine early, but you're going to have a lot of company with some of the others in here that we'll get to. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one. I could go either way. Randomized number 2 is a Chad Brown, one of 3 he has in this race, and his A connections, Klaravich Stables. This one, Chad Brown doesn't put his horses in races where he doesn't think they can factor. This one is just broken her maiden and did so pretty impressively, but you do have to note that was a really big jump from her initial effort at 2. And when it's that big a jump, you do have a little bit of concern. Has had some freshening, and really more than anything else, it's just the class test. Aside from that, I think This one might stack up pretty well, but I just wonder about going from a maiden into Grade 1 company. Frosty O'Toole is kind of interesting. You get Todd Pletcher, and you note that Luis Saez came off of the 2-horse to ride this one, which is kind of interesting. Frosteds are, always really competitive and they're gritty, and I really like him as a sire. If you look at this one, took a couple to break the maiden, but did so in improving fashion each time, and then came out against winners and won with a career high buyer. So those are all positive things. The problem is the next start in the Gazelle didn't do terribly well. And that really, Promisor America was up the track in the Oaks, and Gambling Girl is a deep closer. So this one was up near the lead and couldn't stick around. So you got to wonder about that a little bit. Still, she's with Todd Pletcher, and there's been a freshening. And so, if anybody can get the most out of a horse, I think he can. What I do like is the fact that there's some distance pedigree here, and that might make a difference in this race. So at 20-1, which you don't get a Pletcher too often at that price, this is one maybe to think about. I would probably think under is more likely, but in this field, maybe that having that little distance edge might do the trick. Number 4 is a Colt, another Chad Brown, and you get Jose Ortiz aboard as a hot rider at Belmont right now. Right off the bat, seeing a Chad Brown at 12-1 has got to get you interested. This one went for $625,000 at the Keeneland September sale, so there's some big expectations here, being by Into Mischief, Empire Maker on the bottom. The distance isn't going to be a problem. I think that's a plus in this race. If you look, having broken the maiden and won at 1 1/8 in the Busanda, and beat Gambling Girl, who came back and ran a nice second in the Oaks. Took a little time off and went back in the Gazelle and kind of regressed a little bit. Didn't do terribly well, and that was a race probably that was set up pretty well for her to run in, and I think that's why she's at 12-1 in this field. Still, she's been freshened, and I think she could rebound. And with an improved effort at 12-1, I think this is one maybe you want to think about, given some of the distance limitations of some of the other horses in this race. Number 5 is Money's Gold, and we were all so excited about this one. When you debut with a 101 buyer and was winning for fun 3 straight, you thought the world's in front of this one, and then the 8 Bells, and finally ran up against some competition. Did very well, and one of the things I was impressed with is that this one rallied in the stretch and looked beat, red carpet ready, looked like she had put this one away, and this one came right back at her. So that shows a lot of grit. I was impressed with that. However, she's by Munnings. Munnings gets sprinters. He's got Medaglia d'Oro underneath, but you do have to wonder that with a class test in the 8 Bells at 7 furlongs, this one didn't take it down. And now you're stretching out to 1 1/16. Really got to wonder about that. I mean, if Todd Pletcher put this horse in the race, I mean, I guess you could say he's not worried about it. But there is other early pace in this race. And I do have my questions about this one at 1 1/16, and at 9-5. I guess you could use. I mean, there's too much speed there not to, and in a 1-turn race, maybe this one can stretch out. But I have some doubts, and so I'm trying to find some value in this race more than anything because of that. Number 6 is Pretty Mischievous, another. Brendan Walsh, Tyler Gaffleone, great combination. Won the Kentucky Oaks. Should be as a deserving 2-1 price in this race. But there's a couple of things that I wonder about. First and foremost, the positives are this is a 1-turn race. And the thing that's always bothered me about Pretty Mischievous is her last fractions are always really light. And it's a miracle to me that she's won as many 2-turn races as she has, because her last fraction is just always really, really slow. However, she obviously has pluck and, grit, and you can't win 4 out of 6 without, or 5 out of 7 without it. So she's obviously a competitive horse. I do wonder if there's a bounce in order, though. And the reason being is that she got a career high buyer in the Kentucky Oaks, and she was certainly pointed to that race. So usually when a horse is pointed to a race, that you want to bet against them the next time, because there's usually a little bit of regression. And if you look at her pattern over the last 4 races, 80, 87, 81, 92, that's a Z pattern. So there is the possibility of regression. Clearly fits within this class. I mean, I wouldn't talk you out of using, but I just have a feeling that this one is going to bounce a little bit. And so I'm going to try to beat it with some value. Good Girl, Bad Habits. It's trained by Brittany Russell, really nice trainer down in Maryland. And this one hasn't done anything wrong. You see he's won 2 races in a row for fun. The couple of questions I have is, number one, she's by Mastery, not necessarily a 2-turner or a distant sire in this case. You have to like the fact that Jesus Toledo, her regular jockey, made the trip. So that's encouraging. That usually bodes pretty well that they think this one's going to run well. But it's a big step up to 1 mile and a 16th. And this one hasn't faced any competition at all. And being on the front end, what's going to happen when she runs against Money's Gold up on the front? So I think this one's up against it. I just can't back it because there's too many things working against this one. Number 8 is Exceed, and this one is very interesting to me. Chad Brown trains. You got Flavian Pratt and Judd Mont, great connections. This one's by Into Mischief, so distance shouldn't be an issue, and you got Mizzen Mask underneath. So this is a 2-turn pedigree. Yes, this is a 1-turn race, but it's really the fact that I think she's going to be comfortable at the distance. That's what I like about this one the most. Now, you see won at first asking, and then it was immediately moved up to a graded stakes. And incidentally, she won against Older for the first time, which is always a really good sign. Went in the 8 bells and made a big move and just couldn't hold on. Red Carpet Ready with Money's Gold were a little too much that day, but that was at 7 furlongs. I think at 1 mile and a 16th that you're playing into this one's wheelhouse. And at 8-1, I think you're going to get a really good value. And I like this one a lot as a sleeper, and I'm definitely going to use. The third leg of the All Stakes Pick 4 is the Grade 2 Belmont Gold Cup. It's the 10th race, and it's for 2 miles on the turf for 4-year-olds and up. And, of course, we have to note that even at Belmont, they need 3 turns to get 2 miles. So it's these are these marathon type of races. A lot of times it's early speed who can just take them to the wire, but we don't know that for sure until we look at the field. So let's do that. Number 1 is Barbados. You see has been running at hurdles or steeplechase the last couple. And real interesting, I love to see the fact that these horses are running in maiden special weights at steeplechase, and yet they've already got multiple wins. So that's kind of a cute little thing. Something that's sort of interesting to me about this horse, and I don't really know anything about steeplechase, and so if any of you have some info, well, please feel free to drop it along. But look at the weights this one's carrying. 154, 154, 152, 171, 135, 135, 166, 159, 168, and so on and so forth. That has to be worth something. That you're dropping 40 pounds to go into this race. And it's just something I'm a little intrigued by. This one looks like he's in decent enough form has got 3 lifetime wins. So just one I'm kind of thinking about in those terms. And at 30-1, I'm almost thinking, why not? Why don't you give this one a shot? But I don't know. It's kind of a tall order. So we'll see. Number 2 is Siskany. What more can be said? You got Bill Buick in the irons, Godolphin owns, and Charlie Appleby trains. Those are winning connections. As we all know, Charlie Appleby, when he brings them over here, he means business, and they usually can run. Europeans usually win this race, these 2-mile marathon races, because they have more experience at it. We can see that this one's had a fairly a fairly decent record, has multiple wins. Had the last it was in a grade 2. So I'm going to assume that the distance is fine, and given the Applebee's track record, I don't think this one has been in the money 13 out of 18 starts. Like, it's kind of hard not to use this one. Logical win candidate. And then we have our old friend Channel Maker, who these are the kind of races that they put Channel Maker in because he's obviously distance oriented, and you don't have too many at 2 miles or over a mile and a half. So here he is. He really hasn't done much running in the last 6 starts. And granted, they have been all at the graded stakes level and at lesser distances, but I think Father Timer's really starting to catch up with this one, and I just can't back him. Tide of the Sea is kind of interesting. If you note that last race in the Fort Marcy at a mile and an eighth ran his career high at 7 years old. And so that's, at one point you could say, wow, what a race. But the other thing is to say that 7-year-old's not going to run back to that. It's just not going to happen. It never does. And likely a regression is in the offing, even though it is, Tom Morley's a good trainer. But I just can't see this one running back to that for a second time in a row. Not at 7 years old, so I'll pass. Strong Tide is one I think is on the upswing. I ran a nice Man of War at 50-1 and was right there, for the majority of the time. Tried to take it or get up near the lead and try to steal one, but it didn't work out. And, the old warrior Red Knight came back to win it. But if you look, this race would be third off the layoff, and this one has ran in this race last year and got third, and so it seems to be on the upswing and in good form. I think at 10-1, why not? I would throw this one on your tickets. Number 6 is L'Imperator, and trained by this guy Archibald Kingsley, who's Mr. Steeplechase. He's got 3 in this race, and you see that this one is been getting progressively better in hurdles. You see third by 19 and 4 1/4 and then a win. So is in pretty good form. The thing I wonder about more than anything is last year this one was in graded stakes and pretty competitive, and in fact won the Fort Marcy, and yet they moved this one to steeplechase. So I just sort of wonder about that a little bit. It does give me pause. This one could certainly, I don't think there's any reason that this one couldn't come back and fire a decent effort. But you do know those last 3, there was a regression there, and there's just not enough here to get me excited about this one, so I'll pass. Amazing Grace came into this country with a lot of fanfare, and that Orchid Stakes, possessed a close at the end of it. I was like, wow, this is really going to be an amazing horse here. But her next race, she was just a disaster, in my opinion. The Sheepshead Bait, it was a 4-horse field. She had every possible option to close this race out and take it, and just couldn't do it. It had the lane by the rail wide open to go right up and just blow this field away, and just didn't fire at all. And it was really a disappointing race given that inaugural effort. So you'd have to believe 2 miles isn't going to be a problem for this horse, and is coming third off the layoff. I'll expect that whatever the problem might have been, that Clement will correct it. He's just too good a trainer. So I think this one's a logical fit, and you sort of have to use. British Royalty is trained by Barbara Minshaw and is coming down from Canada. And again, probably because there just aren't that many 2-mile races to run it. And you see this one ran in the Belmont Gold Cup last year and got second place. Since then, though, the last 4 races prior to the freshening to end the year weren't very encouraging. Really went off form towards the end. I mean, you see that valedictory was 26 back and on synthetic. So there's been a freshening, but aside from that, I mean, I think her buyers on his best day look a little on the light side, and I just like others in this race better, so I'm going to pass. Number 9 is Tartini. And who would have thought Rob Atras would ever be in a 2-mile turf race? I mean, he's a claiming trainer and a graded stakes at that. So that's the first thing. I go, what is he got a horse in this race? But again, there aren't too many opportunities for horses like this to run in these races. So here we are. You see, the last race was at the Hasta La Vista at Turf Paradise at 1 7/8 miles. And won it. So you've got to believe the distance isn't going to be a problem. What is going to be a problem, I think, is class. This one just looks, the buyers are a little too light, and I just think this one is really up against it in this field, class-wise, so I'll pass. Cibolian is, again, another one by Archibald Kingsley, which is a great name for a trainer, by the way, in my opinion, just to the side. Got Tyler Gaffalione aboard, this one is another one that was running in steeplechase and has now made the move back to flat surfaces. If you look and you'll see, this one did pretty well, did okay, but doesn't really stack up class-wise, I don't think. Did run in this race last year and got a 4th, but I don't really see enough in the form to encourage me that this one could overtake this field, especially with 13 horses in it, and so I'll pass as well. High Definition is kind of curious. Trained by Joseph O'Brien, Aidan O'Brien's son, and got Jose Ortiz in the irons and coming into to the stage for the first time. This one's by Galileo, so, I mean, he sort of has to run in these races. Maybe they can't find enough of them in overseas. I don't know. Has been running in hurdles for the last 4 and has been with mixed results, the first and the second, and then a couple that were nondescript. If you go back in the form to further back, you see this horse really just didn't do much running at all. Granted, it was at Longchamp and St. Cloud or Epsom or the Ascot, so there was some nice tracks, probably facing some pretty good company. You could see a lot of italics in the type, but the fact that is this one really wasn't competing with them, wasn't really factoring. So maybe the firm ground is something this one needs. I don't know, but at 8-1, I'd like to see the price a little higher than that, to be honest. And I could see using Europeans tend to do very well in these type of races just because they have more of an exposure to long turf races. So I'll leave it up to you, but 8-1 seems a little light for me. Cross Border is trained by Mike Maker, and of course he's the marathon specialist on the turf. He can stretch horses out all day, and he got a Rod Ortiz for this one, and they click at 30%, so that's pretty good interest right there. You see, this one has been running in steeplechase for the last few, and has been again another one with mixed results. And but prior to that, if you go back to the stakes form at Saratoga last year, this one finished 5th in the Sword Dancer, and in the Bowling Green had a 97. So there was some pretty good efforts. However, this one's 9 years old, and I think there's a reason they moved this one to steeplechase. And if you want to give this one a shot because of Mike Maker, I wouldn't blame you. But I'm just not confident enough I'm going to get a good race out of this one. The Great Wizard is interesting. You got Graham Motion, second off the layoff, and Johnny V aboard. This one being by Caravaggio and with Galileo underneath. I don't think the distance is going to be a problem. You see, this one is doesn't have a lot of early foot, and that's the only thing that you have to sort of worry about a bit. But did win the last race, and it was allowance N2X level, and has run at the graded stakes level before and done pretty well. It was mostly in California. So the main thing is this one's 4 years old and coming into the race in pretty good form. So I think, at 10-1, I think this one's definitely worth a gander and possible. I think I might use on my tickets for the value. The last leg of the All Stakes Pick 4 is the 11th at Belmont. It's the Grade 3 Intercontinental Stakes. One of my favorite fillies. Boy, was she a handful, but she could run. And made a lot of money off of her in the Breeders' Cup. Kind of sentimental race here. It's run on the inner turf at 6 furlongs for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. And the thing to note in this race is there isn't a lot of early speed signed on here. So it's a rather interesting shape for the race. Number 1 is Poppy Flower. It's trained by Belmont. You got Jose Ortiz aboard. Was closing really well in the license fee the last race. Few others in this field ran in that race, and was getting the bubble rock in the stretch. The one concern is you look and you see that most of the races this one has run in that she's had pace to run to, and not sure you're going to get it here. Without a lot of early speed to deal with. So this one certainly has a good closing kick and is in good form. And if you wanted to use, I wouldn't talk you out of it, but I think she's going to have a lot to do late, and I'm worried that she's not going to have enough pace to run to. Sarah Harper was one that I really couldn't fathom why they didn't give this one a break, and they did, and look what happened. She came out and ran a really nice race in the Unbridled Sydney. Was closing with all kinds of purpose in the stretch. Really nice effort. I got two things bother me a little bit. Number one, that was a career high buyer by a significant amount. And I just wonder if maybe there's going to be a little regression following that at 5 years old. Second off the layoff is an okay spot for Ron Moquette. But that's really the big concern. And this one seems to have transformed her style to be running late as opposed to being up on the engine. Maybe they'll try to do that, revert back to it here. But again, running off a really big effort like that, I wonder if this one's not going to regress a little bit. Clitheroe was a surprise winner in the last race at the N1X debut in the States. Was at 7 furlongs and was put in a nice effort and swung wide and had a nice close in the end. The only thing I'll say is that they were getting to her, and she seems to look like she was flattening out a little bit because she just sort of hung on for the win. Now, this is a cutback to 6 furlongs, which perhaps would solve that problem. But again, you have the issue there isn't a lot of pace in this race. So the cutback, I think, is pretty good. Figaro Lynch has really emerged as a pretty damn good jockey, and we all saw that effort on Perform prior to the Preakness. But so he's going great guns, and that's always a plus when a horse is in this type of situation. So at 15-1, you do get some nice value. Maybe you think about. Messidor ran in the license fee as well, and really didn't got the worst of it of any of them in terms of finishing. It is second off the layoff for Christophe Clement, and this one is likely to improve. But again, the issue is that going to be lingering at the back and is not going to have a lot of pace to run to. Had too much to do in the last one. So I wonder about that as a concern. Again, 12-1, decent price. Christophe Clement and Javier Castellano. It's not a bad value. But I'm probably going to look for others. Number 5 is Baystorm. Full disclosure, this horse really doesn't do it for me. Always seems to be the bridesmaid. Just never seems to get there. I mean, it's got some wins in listed stakes, but you see a lot of seconds and a lot of thirds, and it just always seems to be somebody better. Now, this is a race where she actually has a little bit of a class edge over some of these, and her running style certainly makes her a potent candidate in this race. So I would use, especially since Jonathan Thomas, who was cold as ice at Keeneland, has really resurged, and the barn's going great guns right now. So that's always a positive. So I would, and the other thing to mention is that she did get her career high buyer in her debut off the layoff. And you do have to wonder a little bit about a regression, but this one's so consistent, always in the money, always fires. I'm not going to worry about that too much. And her running style is a big plus in this one, so I would definitely use. Amy C, we're going to see at Keeneland in April, and then scratched out and actually looked pretty good for that race, as I recall. Phil D'Amato doesn't ship unless he means business. So that's always a positive sign when you see these California horses coming over. But I just wonder about the class a little bit. The buyers are a little light in comparison to some of these others. That's really my big issue. But this one also will be rating off the pace, and so could get the jump on the closers. Just not sure that she has enough to close the deal. But 5-1 isn't a bad value, and you do get Flavian Pratt, so maybe one you think about. Bubble Rock is another one. Brad Cox, Joel Rosario. Joel seems to do well with this horse, and they've cut this one back to sprints, and obviously it panned out. Got the career high buyer in the second start at 4, so that's a really positive sign, and appears to be heading in the right direction. So I would expect a good effort here. The fact that this one used to run on the front end regularly and routes, maybe they'd send this one back to take the lead. I think tactically that might make some sense. But this one should be there in the end, I think, without any problem, and definite use, I think. Brad Cox's second entry is Going Good. And this is another one that tactically may have an edge because likes to run up near the pace. And so we'll be right there. And again, another one who can get the jump. Going pretty well. Has been a consistent sort. You see she's in the money quite often, 12 out of 16 times. So it's a good bet that this one will be there in the end. Not sure the top end is there necessarily, but I would think under is a very good likelihood. And maybe you think about this one on top. So here's what our ticket looks like for the All Stakes Pick 4 on Friday. In the 8th race, we are going to use the 3, 4, and 7. Warlock Goddess is a likely win candidate, likely the best in the field, and you could easily single. But I like Didia, and I like market segmentation. There's 2 horses on the rise who might give her a challenge, and if she's a little not up to par, meaning Warlock Goddess, then maybe they can take it at a price. In the 9th, we're going to use Money's Gold because if she can get the distance at a 1-turn mile and a 16th, then she will win this race on the front end. But I like a Cult, and I also like the 8 horse as well, Exceed. I think that one really offers a really nice value, and I like the chances a lot if Money's Gold doesn't fire in particular. I think I'm a little worried about Pretty Mischievous in terms of a regression off the Kentucky Oaks, and that's why I'm excluding. In the 10th race is, these 2-mile races, your guess is as good as mine, but we're going to spread and try to get some optimum value. I'm going to use that one horse just at 30-1. Why not? And with the big weight difference, maybe it'll make a difference. Who knows? Then we're going to use Siskiny because Charlie Appleby and William Buick are pretty logical. And then we're going to use Amazing Grace, and we're going to use Grey Wizard, and we're going to use the 5 as well. So that should give us some pretty good options to cover the race. In the 11th, we're going to use 5, 7, and 8. We're going to use Bubble Rock and Going Good, the 2 Brad Coxes. And then we'll throw the 5 in Baystorm because the running style should put her in really good position, and I think she's got a really solid chance to win. So that's a 3 times 3 is 9, times 5 is 45, times 3 is 135 on a 50-cent base. It's a $67.50 ticket, And there is some value, particularly in that 2 mile race. If we can get a price home, we should be looking pretty good. But I think there is some value in some of the other races, so it has the potential to pay pretty well. So the Festival of Racing will be off and running on Friday with a really good pick four. I think there's some really solid races there, and really looks to be a nice weekend of stakes races altogether, culminating with the Belmont, of course. To that end, we will have part 4 of our Elements of Handicapping series, Pace, in the very near future, so be on the lookout for that. Plus, we'll have a sequence for the All Stakes pick 5. I believe it's an All Stakes pick 5 on Saturday, and looks to have some really exciting opportunities. So we'll put that together for you so you can look forward to that as well. Of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe. And thanks for coming by, particularly for you new folks who are joining us. Welcome. And we'd love to hear from you guys. Keep those comments coming. Always enjoy John G. in particular, John Moeller. You two guys are always consistent, and I really appreciate your feedback. And I think you got some interesting perspectives there, and definitely constructive, and that's what I want in this community. So really happy the way it's growing. I'll be talking to you in the very near future for the rest of this week, seemingly endlessly, isn't it? But it's exciting, and I think we got some great races to look forward to. So until we meet again, be well.